Welcome to the Explainer. When a major disaster strikes, a coordinated response is absolutely everything. But that kind of coordination, it doesn't just happen out of nowhere. It has to be practiced. So today, we're going to break down a massive disaster drill to really understand the 4 essential roles people play to make sure we're all ready when it counts.
All right, so let's set the scene here. Imagine this. A massive 8.8 magnitude earthquake has just torn through California. The devastation is everywhere, and to make things way worse, communications are completely down. No cell service, no internet, nothing. So, how do you even begin to coordinate a rescue?
In that exact scenario, that's what the beacon exercise is all about. It's basically a massive dress rehearsal. It gives emergency services and community partners a chance to test their plans and find the weak spots before a real crisis happens.
Okay, so let's really dive in and meet the people who make this whole thing work. There are 4 key roles, and we're going to start with the folks right on the front lines, the players.
Okay, so if you think about this whole exercise like a giant play, the players are the actors up on stage. These are your first responders, your emergency operations staff, the people who are actually in the scenario, reacting in real time just like they would if it were really happening.
And right here, you can see what the real challenge is for these players. They've got to do all these fundamental tasks, reporting from the field, asking for resources, sending messages, but without all the modern tech they usually count on. This whole drill is designed to stress test those old-school manual systems when everything else has gone dark.
But, the players aren't just thrown in there and left on their own. Let's move on to the next role, because let's face it, every good play needs a director to keep things on track.
And that's where the controllers come in. I want you to think of them as the directors, or maybe even the referees of the whole game. Their job is to guide the action, to feed new information to the players to move the story forward, and to jump in and help if a team gets a little stuck. They're the ones keeping the whole thing moving.
So what's really crucial to get here is that controllers are actively shaping the experience as it happens. Whether that means throwing a new curveball at them, like a simulated aftershock, or just helping a team figure out a tricky question, they make sure the exercise stays productive and on schedule.
Okay, now we're going to talk about a role that sounds kind of similar, but trust me, it's totally different. Let's talk about the people whose entire job is to learn lessons for the future.
So let's meet the evaluators. Going back to our play analogy, these guys are the critics. They're the coaches, sitting up in the stands just watching. Their job isn't to get involved at all. It's just to watch, take a ton of notes, and figure out what worked and, well, what didn't.
You can really think of them as the ultimate students of the drill. Every single thing a player does is a piece of data for an evaluator. Their entire mission is to just soak up all the information they can, because that information is what's going to make the real-world response plans better down the road.
And this slide just lays it out perfectly. It's a simple difference, but it is absolutely vital. Controllers are all about the here and now, making this drill work. Evaluators are all about the future, making the next real emergency go smoother. One directs the play, the other writes the review. Simple as that.
All right, that brings us to our 4th and final group. And these are the folks whose job, really, is just to watch and learn from a bit of a distance.
We're talking about the observers. And yep, you guessed it. In our theater analogy, they're the audience. They're there to see the whole response in action, to get a handle on the process. But they don't step on stage or say a single line.
And this is actually a super important role for people who need to get the big picture of how this stuff works but aren't, first responders themselves. So think about your local elected officials or leaders from community groups. They need to see how the sausage gets made, so to speak.
This is probably the most accessible role in the whole exercise. You don't need any special training. You just have to promise to watch and not get in the way. And that outside perspective, it's incredibly valuable for building that wider community understanding of what it takes to be prepared.
And what I love about this is when you look at the basic kit for everybody, it's not about a bunch of fancy high-tech gear. Sure, a radio is nice to have, but what's the one thing everyone needs? A notebook and a pen. Because writing down what's happening, that's absolutely key no matter what your role is.
Okay, so we've got our actors, our directors, our critics, and our audience. Let's pull this all together and see why you really need all 4 of these distinct roles to have a successful drill.
See, each role is a crucial part of this complete cycle. You've got the players who are doing the thing, the controllers who are guiding it, the evaluators who are there for improving it next time, and the observers who are watching it to understand it. You take away any one of those pieces, and the whole thing just doesn't work as well.
And that really brings us to the big takeaway here.
What this shows us is that getting ready for a disaster, well, that's not just a job for first responders. There's a role for anyone who wants to help their community get ready. So I'll leave you with this question. Looking at these roles, which one would you be ready to step up and play?